Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to our coffee times to talk about horror. And today I am here to talk about a new movie. I'm here to talk about The Crow 2024.
It's coffee time!
Originally, I didn't know if I was going to even review this movie because, let's be honest, I have a very personal attachment with the original, and I knew that I was going to be comparing both of them the whole time in my mind. But I know a lot of you guys want to know my honest thoughts on the movie because some of you, like me, are very hesitant to give this new one a chance. So I thought, you know what, why not? I'm gonna sit here. I already sacrificed for you guys and went to watch it. So I thought I would give you my 2 cents on the movie. Is going to be spoiler free. I'm gonna talk about some stuff that happens in the film, but it's the same kind of stuff that happened in the original, so those I don't consider spoilers. I'm not gonna talk about the ending or any big reveals or spoilers or anything like that, so that anybody that wants to hear my opinion before venturing into the cinema can do it spoiler free. But the fact that they put an embargo for reviews and people were not allowed to share their opinion, and they would only allow them to do so one day before the official release, already tells you that they had no faith in this movie. And they knew if people were, uploading their reviews early, nobody would buy tickets for the film. That's the fear that they had, and I understand. Ever since there were talks about a possible remake slash reboot of The Crow, I was always a little bit scared about it. I always had a very bad feeling about it because this is one of the most iconic films of the 90s. The visuals that were gothic, neo-noir with a very straightforward story, but that has such emotional baggage and delivered a fantastic revenge story is something that cannot be replicated nowadays. And I also thought that it was going to be a little bit disrespectful for Brandon Lee's legacy as the Crow, and I just wished that they would have left this alone. Brandon Lee as the vengeful hero Eric Draven was fantastic. He truly embraced the character, and he was so dedicated to the role that he decided to immerse himself in cold water before filming the resurrection scene because he thought that coming back from the dead probably felt very cold, and he wanted to be able to portray that also with his physicality. He also worked really closely with the director Alex Proyas to work on how Eric would dress and how Eric would speak. The original felt like a perfect movie, and I've always had the feeling that a remake or a reboot just would never be able to even compare to that. This movie entered development in December 2008, and since then they didn't know exactly what to do with it. They wanted to kind of reinvent The Crow and do something a little bit different, even though we still got the same story kind of. Eric Draven and Shelley Webster, they could have chosen other characters to make it completely different. Anyway, there were many people attached to the project. Directors changed, actors that were going to play Eric Draven changed through the years, and finally in 2022, that is when Bill Skarsgård was announced as the new Eric Draven. According to the internet, The Crow from 2024 is a gothic superhero movie. I think I missed the gothic part in the movie, but we will get to that. Directed by Rupert Sanders, The Crow is a reboot and the 5th installment in the Crow franchise. And the idea was to adapt the comic series by James O'Barr that came out in 1989. The internet also says that this movie follows Bill Skarsgård as Eric Draven, a musician, I guess, that is killed and comes back from the dead for revenge. So I guess I missed the part where he was a true musician in the movie. Yeah. And his fiancée, Shelley, is played by FKA Twigs. Soulmates Eric Draven and Shelley Webster are brutally murdered when the demons of her past catch up with them. Given the chance to save his true love by sacrificing himself, Draven returns to seek bloody revenge against the killers, traversing the world of the living and the dead to put the wrong things right. My first impression of the characters was Is that the Joker and Harley Quinn? Did I enter the wrong room in the cinema? No, really guys, that's honestly what I thought. The original movie had like a 5-minute introduction of the characters Eric and Shelly and what happened to them. And in those like 5 minutes introduction, we were so hooked. We were so attached to these characters. The atmosphere, the script, everything was just flawless. And the new movie needs 30 to 45 minutes to introduce us to Eric and Shelly. Unfortunately, all of that backstory is something that I couldn't care less about. And we also very quickly figure out that Eric and Shelly have no chemistry. Like, the chemistry checked out before the movie even started filming. We spent 40 minutes introducing this couple. They were extremely flat characters. They have zero character depth. How can you spend 40 minutes of a movie introducing two characters, the main characters, and them having absolutely zero personality? Bland. And after all that waiting time, you finally get to the scene that should have been the opening scene, which is when Eric and Shelly are killed. We already know this is gonna happen. The only thing is, I didn't care one bit that these guys were going to die. I was actually rooting for it. I was like, hopefully now, after they're killed, things are gonna actually, you know, start. I did not care. It was too late for me. My heart actually stopped beating 35 minutes ago when I already smelled the shit show that this movie was going to be. In the original movie, we have several villains. We have Top Dollar, who was this kind of vampiric, dark, disturbing guy that owned the city, and his minions that were so iconic. They were such interesting characters, very different from each other. Yeah, a little bit kind of comic-like, but they worked so well. Danny Huston was supposed to play the villain in this movie, and I say supposed to play because I missed the part where he was the villain. I missed the part where we actually got to know this guy. I missed the part where he was actually in any way, shape or form interesting. There was no trace of personality in him. It was boring. We didn't feel threatened by him. He was not scary. He didn't have anything going on for him. And by the end of the movie, you still don't know why, how he did the things that he did and why he exists. Like, you just get zero information. And his minions, you may ask, the people that worked for him, well, these are the most cookie cutter, boring, bland characters I have ever seen. I don't remember not even one name from the villains, not even from the main villain. Like, who was that guy? Like, nobody cared. I forgot to mention One-Face Shelly in the movie, played by FKA Twigs. And I say One-Face Shelly because the whole movie, she only gave us one face, one expression. That's all she could deliver. And honestly, nothing against her, but I think she should maybe focus on her singing career. I don't want to be mean, but if you're going to be an actor, you have to be able to portray different emotions with your face, with the way you move, with the way you act. Sometimes it's not even something that you have to do or take to the extreme, but let me tell you, she was like one face, the whole movie, one face. That's all she could deliver, and it hurt my feelings. Another thing I will comment about the characters before we move on is that you barely get to see Eric Draven in his iconic makeup. Well, the kinda weird, stupid makeup they gave him in this movie, because it's not even makeup, really. So they only utilize that for the very last section of the film, which is just such a waste, because when you go to see The Crow, you want to see this guy in makeup getting revenge. That makeup is what makes him embody that revenge story. Let's talk about how the movie looks, right? The original was very metal, very leather, very much like gothic, dark. This is basically Hollywood plastic style. That's it. When Proyas adapted James O'Barr's comics, he turned it into something so dark and gothic, and all of that is gone from this movie. This new adaptation, forget all of that. Not to mention that the editing in this movie was also not great, and sometimes the transition between scenes was so choppy. it also hurt my feelings. Let's talk about the soundtrack, shall we? Because we all know the soundtrack of the original movie, it's iconic and it enhanced the scenes and the emotions so much. So I was hoping the new one was going to use soundtrack for this as well. Now, let me tell you, the song choices were awful. They were awful. I didn't like them. I didn't think that they even made sense with the scenes. It was such a disconnect between the thing that I was watching and the thing that I was hearing. And I don't care what kind of genre you use. If it works in the scene, it works. It doesn't have to be the dark gothic metal that I like. You know, if it's something that works, it works, right? But it didn't. For example, one of the most iconic scenes from the movie is when Eric puts on the, I was gonna say makeup, but in this movie it's kind of like the black goo on his face for the first time to become the Crow. That is a very important moment, and the song that they chose to go with that scene was like a record scratch. Like it didn't fit. It's like a cat scratching a board. No. It's time to talk about the worst thing in this movie, which is the script, the dialogues. I don't even know where to start, you guys. Like, it felt like a 14-year-old wrote this, not gonna lie. The original movie had so many iconic lines, so many one-liners, some amazing monologues, and what we got in this one is just disrespectful. The original gave us lines like, "It can't rain all the time," or "Is it gasoline I smell?" They did try to integrate some of the lines from the original into the new one and change them up a little bit, and that felt even more disrespectful. My heart was bleeding. One of my favorite moments in the original is when Eric says, "He died a year ago. He died the moment he touched her. They're all dead. They just don't know it yet." It's just so powerful and so full of emotion, and the way that Brandon Lee delivered those lines just gives me goosebumps. In the new one, they went with, "I'm gonna kill them, every single one of them." It's like they tried to simplify the script, and also it lacks all emotion. In the original, we also have an iconic scene when Eric is trying to get back Shelly's ring, and he's talking to the guy that owns the shop, and he says, "Each one of these is a life you helped destroy." So powerful. Also one of my favorite scenes of the movie. There are just so many. I could go on and on about this. It's like they tried to take lines and things from the original, and it ended up being just embarrassing. The original was such a good revenge movie. We wanted them to pay. We wanted them to suffer. In this movie, I didn't care. I didn't care about the villains. I didn't care about the main characters. Everybody was just so boring. They even tried to use the lines from the very beginning of the original movie when Sarah is explaining to us that sometimes the Crow will bring back a soul in order to put the wrong things right. And it just felt so poorly delivered. No emotions, no nothing. The pacing in general was awful. The movie starts very slowly introducing us to these two characters that have zero personality and zero chemistry. Then in the middle, when you think, you know, maybe things are gonna start to get interesting after they have been just killed, well, no, you were wrong. The second part is spent basically following Eric going back and forth from this in-between world, going back to ask this Mr. Miyagi from Temu for advice, and then going back to the world of the living, and I was just so done. The third act was rushed because they had spent the whole movie on unimportant, unnecessary scenes and dialogues that were absolutely atrocious, and now we're in the third act and we have to rush because we need to get to the climax and end this. Let's talk about the horror. Well, the gothic visuals and the darkness of the movie went off the window the moment the movie started, so you can already forget about that, which was the essence of the original story and what worked so well when you were telling such a heartbreaking story. The only good thing that this movie had when it comes to the horror was the gore. There was a lot of gore, especially in the third act. It was nice to see. I love to see all the different types of kills and the gore. However, the CGI sometimes took me. The CGI sometimes was not the best. I'm trying to find positive things to talk about this movie, and the gore is one of them, but not even that they could get right. So there it is. The gore was great. There's a lot of gore, a lot of nice kills, and chop, 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 and a lot of cool action moments, but they also have their flaws. The opera scene was fun. I enjoyed it. And you know, it was not difficult because the rest was just not good. And don't get me wrong, the opera scene was not perfect, but at least it gave me what I wanted, which was a bloodbath and revenge. And since this was going to be an R-rated movie, at least I wanted to see the blood flow. With all of these being said and done, I struggled a lot to kind of decide what kind of rating I wanted to give this movie, because the only person that understood the assignment was Bill Skarsgård, and he could not carry this movie on his shoulders. He tried to bring so much emotion and character depth into Eric, but he didn't, you know, he didn't manage to do it because everything else was against him. Everything else just was against him, and I feel sorry for him. They did my boy dirty. But you know, another positive thing is that you get to see Bill Skarsgård's ass. So, you know, bonus point for that. I did enjoy some of the action scenes. I did enjoy the opera scene, the gore. So at least I'm gonna give this movie 1 out of 5, because a couple of things I still could kind of, no, enjoy is not the word, accept. I know that Alex Proyas said that he wishes they wouldn't have done it because he wants to respect Brandon Lee's legacy, and they finished that movie for him and for his legacy. And you know, when you see what they have done now with it, I don't even want to imagine what Alex Proyas feels now with this film. So in my opinion, don't waste your time going to watch this movie, especially not if you're a fan of the original. It's not worth it, the 30 hours of pain. Like Eric Draven would say, I have something to give you, I don't want it anymore. 30 hours of pain all at once. You know what they say sometimes in horror movies, don't mess with the original? I guess these guys didn't get the memo. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed my spoiler-free review of The Crow 2024. Let me know down below your thoughts and feelings about it, and about the original as well, which is one of my favorite movies of all times. For me, that movie is perfection. Let's talk about it in the comments down below. Thank you guys as always so much for watching, and I hope to see you all as always in our next coffee time. Bye!